Picture the sky above you right now, whatever time it is where you are standing. If it is daytime, imagine the sun simply vanishing, not fading, not eclipsed, just gone, as if someone reached out and switched it off. Then, 5 seconds later, imagine it snapping back into existence exactly where it was. This sounds like a small, almost trivial event. 5 seconds is barely enough time to take a breath. But the truth of what would actually happen to you, to Earth, and to the entire solar system during those 5 seconds is far stranger than you might expect. And it all comes down to one surprising fact about how light and gravity actually work. Here is the detail that changes everything. The sun sits about 93 million miles away from you, and light does not travel instantly across that distance. It takes about 8 minutes and 20 seconds for sunlight to reach Earth. That means the sunlight hitting your skin or lighting up your street right now already left the sun over 8 minutes ago. If the sun disappeared at this exact moment, you would not know it. You would keep seeing sunlight, keep feeling its warmth, and the sky would remain completely normal for a little more than 8 full minutes after the sun was actually gone. You would be living in the past, bathed in light from a star that no longer exists, without any way to know it. This is not just true for light. According to Einstein's general theory of relativity, gravity itself is not instantaneous either. Gravitational influence also propagates at the speed of light. So the pull you feel from the sun's mass right now, the exact force that is keeping Earth locked into its orbit, is also based on where the sun was and what it was doing about 8 minutes ago. If the sun vanished, Earth would not suddenly go flying off into space the instant it disappeared. Earth would continue following its normal orbital path for those same 8 minutes, curving along its usual track as if nothing had happened, because the gravitational information about the sun's disappearance had not yet caught up to the planet. So picture the timeline building up. The sun disappears. For the next 8 minutes and 20 seconds, absolutely nothing changes from your perspective. The sky is blue if it is daytime where you are. Shadows fall normally. Solar panels keep generating power. Plants keep photosynthesizing. Satellites keep orbiting exactly as expected. You would have no idea that the single most important object in the solar system had just ceased to exist, because both the light and the gravity you are currently experiencing are essentially echoes from the recent past. Then the moment arrives. 8 minutes and 20 seconds after the disappearance, everything changes at once, and it changes with no warning at all. If you happen to be looking at the sky in that instant, the sun would not fade or dim first. It would simply disappear, snapping to black in a fraction of a second. Daytime would become nighttime instantly, without any twilight in between, no orange horizon, no gradual dimming, just an immediate and total plunge into darkness in the middle of what should have been a bright afternoon. If you were driving, walking, or doing anything that depended on daylight, you would suddenly find yourself surrounded by total darkness, with only the stars, planets, and possibly a confused, panicked world around you visible for guidance. Street lights would begin flicking on automatically. Traffic systems that were not built for sudden unexplained darkness could cause chaos on roads within seconds, since drivers would lose visibility instantly rather than gradually the way they do at dusk. At the very same moment the light disappeared, Earth's gravitational anchor would disappear too. With the sun's gravity suddenly gone, Earth would stop curving along its orbital path and would instead begin moving in a straight line, continuing in whatever direction it happened to be traveling at that exact instant, based on the laws of inertia. This is the part where 5 seconds becomes critically important. Over a span of just 5 seconds, Earth moves at roughly 18.5 miles per second along its orbit, meaning it would travel in that straight tangent line for a distance of around 92 miles before anything changed again. In cosmic terms, that is an almost meaningless distance, a rounding error compared to the 93 million mile gap between Earth and the Sun. You would not feel this shift in your body. There would be no jolt, no sensation of being flung anywhere, because everything around you, the ground, the atmosphere, the buildings, would all be moving together in exactly the same new straight-line path. 5 seconds after it vanished, the sun would reappear exactly where it had been, and instantly light and gravity would spring back into existence at that location, though you personally would not see or feel that return immediately either, because that information also needs another 8 minutes and 20 seconds to physically reach you. So, from your point of view, the sequence would look like this: 8 minutes and 20 seconds of complete normalcy after the actual disappearance, then a sudden snap to total darkness. Then, if you could somehow track it precisely, a very slight, imperceptible curve back toward a normal orbit as gravity reasserted itself. Though again, you personally would not perceive this, because it happens at a scale far too small and far too fast for human senses. Finally, another 8 minutes and 20 seconds later, sunlight and warmth would return just as abruptly as they left, the sky snapping back to daylight with the same lack of warning as the sudden darkness. Now think about what this means for the physical world around you during that brief blackout. 5 seconds is an extremely short window, so most of the systems you depend on would not have time to fail in any serious way. Earth's atmosphere holds an enormous amount of thermal energy, so temperatures would not drop in any noticeable sense during a 5-second gap in sunlight. You would not feel any sudden chill. Plants would not be harmed either, since photosynthesis depends on light received over minutes and hours, not fractions of a second. So a 5-second gap would have effectively zero biological impact on crops, forests, or ocean plankton. Where you would notice real consequences is in anything relying on continuous solar input or precise timing. Solar power plants and rooftop panels would experience an instantaneous drop to zero output, and then an equally instantaneous return, which could send a small shockwave through electrical grids that are heavily dependent on solar energy, especially during peak daylight hours. Grid operators would likely see brief voltage fluctuations as backup power systems attempted to compensate for a 5-second gap they were never designed to expect. Air travel would face a strange moment of chaos too, since pilots relying on visual horizon references during that instant of total darkness would suddenly lose all visual orientation, even though modern aircraft instruments would continue functioning normally throughout, keeping the planes stable regardless of what pilots could or could not see outside the windows. You would also want to think about the psychological impact this event would have on every person on the daylight side of the planet at that moment. Total, instantaneous darkness in the middle of the day with absolutely no warning, no eclipse-like gradual dimming, and no clear explanation would almost certainly trigger widespread panic. Emergency services would likely be flooded with calls within seconds. Anyone driving would face an abrupt and dangerous loss of visibility. Anyone outdoors might stumble or fall. Animals, especially birds and other creatures that rely on daylight for navigation and behavior, would likely react with confusion, and there is a reasonable chance of increased incidents like bird strikes or animals darting unpredictably as their internal systems registered an impossible, instant transition from day to night and back again. Meanwhile, half of Earth would be experiencing nighttime already when this event occurred, and for those people, almost nothing would seem different at all. If you happen to be on the night side of the planet during this event, you might not notice anything unusual in the sky itself, since it was already dark, though extremely precise instruments monitoring solar activity, satellites, and gravitational measurements would still detect the anomaly and record a very strange 5-second gap in solar output and gravitational influence that scientists would spend years trying to fully explain. It is also worth considering what this event would reveal to astronomers and physicists watching closely. This kind of anomaly would offer an almost unprecedented real-world test of general relativity, confirming in dramatic fashion that gravity genuinely does propagate at the speed of light rather than acting instantaneously across space, a detail that had only ever been confirmed indirectly through subtler astronomical observations before. Every gravitational wave detector, every solar observatory, and every space agency on the planet would suddenly have the most extraordinary 5 seconds of data in the history of science, capturing a genuine natural experiment that no one could have deliberately designed or predicted. By the time the dust settled, both figuratively and quite literally in terms of Earth's negligible 90-mile drift, life would essentially return to normal. The sun would be back exactly where it belonged, its gravity restored, its light restored, and Earth would continue along an orbit so close to its original path that the difference would be utterly meaningless over any timescale that matters to you. No climate disaster, no permanent darkness, no planet spinning off into the void. Just a 5-second fluke so brief that its true danger lies not in physical destruction, but in the sheer, disorienting shock of a bright day turning instantly black without a single second of warning, and then turning back again just as fast, leaving you and everyone else on the daylight side of the planet wondering, for the rest of your life, exactly what those 5 seconds really were.